police doing their best to try and keep control, to try and maintain order, but there is very little of that at the moment in this particular corner of Parliament Square. The police horses, a lot of the protesters have been trying to attack and push at the police horses and break through the police lines. A real kind of confrontation, a standoff really between the two, and a very fluid situation that the police are trying to deal with, because there's an awful lot of disorder, and the police being very robust in the way they are trying to deal with this. But at times it has felt, being down here on the ground among it all, that it is slightly out of control, that there is an awful lot of arrests being made, people being pinned to the ground and arrested and taken away. And as I say, so far that we've seen, certainly one police officer injured in these outbreaks of violence that are now occurring all around us in this particular corner of Parliament Square. I can also see one of the metal gates or metal fences that has been used as a missile. They're being lifted now by a lot of the protesters around us as they try to use them to throw them at the police officers who have been charging at them on the police horses. It is quite a frightening situation. There's an awful lot of anger in this crowd as they know that these votes are going on in the Houses of Parliament, probably 300 metres or so away from where all this is happening. But the police officers on these horses in this particular corner of Parliament Square really struggling to maintain control, struggling to keep order here, as I'm watching just one particular officer using his baton to try and charge down those protesters beneath him as he's up there on one of these police horses. And as I say, one of those police officers on a horse was de-seated, thrown off her horse, and for a moment the horse was on the loose. Quite a worrying scene. The police at the moment doing their best to try and maintain order, but it's not an easy job at all, as this does seem to be descending even more into very violent scenes here.
Yes, Tim, in fact, Tom, we've been witnessing those scenes as you described them. In the middle of our shots at the moment, police have a protester that has been wrestled to the ground. Let's just see what they're going to be doing with this protester now. A lot of photographers around as well, taking his picture as police take him away with his head lowered. So clearly, as Tom Parmenter was saying to us there, a volatile situation. He was talking about an officer having a bad leg injury. The police horse we saw ourselves breaking loose a little bit earlier as well. Let's get a different perspective on this. Mark White is at the other side of Parliament Square from there. Mark, Tom Parmenter talking about a volatile situation just there on that Victoria Street entrance to Parliament Square. Does it feel more tense where you are?
Well, it does, yes, indeed, because I've actually moved up to an area within the heart of the protest as well. There are, I would estimate, at least 2,000 to 3,000 in this particular area, just near the Supreme Court building, which is on the right of where the protesters are, at the bottom end of Victoria Street. And really, the situation just in the last few minutes has deteriorated quite significantly, as you were hearing from Tom Parmenter there. As we were approaching this situation, certain people within the crowd shouting to others to join them and to surge forward. And I can now see one of those tall barriers that was surrounding the green on Parliament Square being pushed through, a multitude of hands lifting that, and another barrier just behind that one, lifting it forward, lifting it towards the police lines, where that will be used as a weapon thrown towards the police. As you can see, the mounted officers have retreated for the moment, but it's a situation that is clearly very dangerous for those officers on the front line, and you may well see those mounted police again moving into the crowd in the coming minutes.
OK, Mark, we'll rejoin you very shortly, no doubt. But let's talk to Emma Birchley now, who's also on Parliament Square with some protesters. Emma, over to you.
Yeah, when you're standing here, you really get a sense of the different pockets of atmosphere here. There's kind of a carnival atmosphere in one area, then there are fires burning in Parliament Square, and then every now and then we're seeing the protesters surging back from that police line where the mounted police are trying to push back the protesters. And one of the people who was right at the front up against that line is Jack, a second-year student, and also his friend Josh. And Jack actually has got a cut on the head. Tell me what happened to you.
So we went up the front. We'd only been there for, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes, and a lot of people were carrying along a load of books around, and a guy and a guy had left this book there. A guy was lying on the floor getting hit, and I threw the book in front of him, and I just got cracked right on the head, and I just woke up somewhere outside with Josh dragging me away. And
effectively what happened, we were the horses charged forward, and we got stuck between the horses and the police, at which point we were putting our hands up because we were trapped, couldn't go anywhere, and the police started batoning me, and I managed to get away. At this point, Jack fell over and they hit him in the head with the baton while he was on the floor, and a few of us had to drag him out. If we hadn't dragged him out, the police would have kept going.
And Jack, you were knocked out?
Yeah, I just got knocked unconscious, but and I remember I put my hand up and there was loads of blood, and but then I was outside. But everyone outside was really helpful. So
I'd really like to emphasise as well, we were there with our hands up. I was saying to the police, where do you want me to go? And they just answered that by hitting us.
The problem is that you're obviously peaceful protesters. There are people in there, I was in there, there are people in there that are trying to cause trouble. What do you think about them?
I think that's probably a minority of people, and I would say most of those people are back over towards Parliament. The initial violence then started from the police charging horses into the crowd, which, you know, there was really young kids in there. As soon as you charge horses into the crowd, it's just dangerous. There's nowhere for people to go. And we have the situation that we had where we get trapped and get battered.
People have been throwing large, like 2-litre bottles of water at horses, though. You can see them shying up, sticks in the air, sticks from the banners. I mean, is that acceptable behaviour?
Well, is it acceptable to hit me with a baton and hit Jack while he's on the floor when I've got my hands up like this saying, where would you like me to go?
I think there's, well, you say there's a lot of people, or a minority causing aggression amongst the students. There's also a minority, maybe a minority of police causing that aggression and behaving out of...
How disappointed are you that it's come to this in that corner?
Well, I'm disappointed in our MPs for creating this situation that we have to have now. This is the only way that it appears we can get a message to them. So it's just going to keep going as well. And today, when the bill goes through as we're expecting it to, it's just going to keep going and going and going. You know, the students aren't going to stop. And with that, I think, sadly, violence will probably continue and escalate.
OK.
When you voted a party into power, I voted for Liberal Democrats to be in power, and they've pledged one thing and then they do another. It's going to create anger. It's going to create anger. There's no other way to do it. And people will come out and peacefully protest and they'll push, but there will be the violent minority in the police force and outside that are going to kick off. And yeah.
All right, thanks very much. So it's about an hour and a half now until that vote. I don't see anyone leaving here, certainly in the near future. They look set to stay for now at least.
Emma Birchley, thank you for that. I understand that earlier, in fact, we saw the live pictures of students climbing on the statue of Winston Churchill, which you can just see just disappearing on the right of your shot on the right there. Climbing on the statue of Winston Churchill and daubing it in graffiti. Now, these are the latest pictures coming into us of a policeman, an injured policeman, being treated by the side of the road. I'm trying to get my bearings on where that is. That's Victoria Street again, isn't it? That's outside the Queen Elizabeth II Centre. Yes, and one of the police officers, who is a medic, as you can see from its back there, treating this officer who is down there on the ground. And we did hear from our correspondent who's down there in that area. He talked about an officer with a bad leg injury, and I'm not sure if that is the officer that he was talking about. But we did see one police officer thrown from his horse. That horse then ran free briefly up Victoria Street. Let's rejoin Tom Parmenter, who's been down in that corner there. Tom, just looking at some shots there of an injured police officer down there on the ground. You were telling us a short while ago that the situation had turned pretty volatile.
Yes, it has indeed. I think the pictures you've been looking at were taken perhaps 10, 15 minutes ago or so. I'm now looking at another police officer who's been dragged away from the police lines, very seriously injured indeed. Officers, medics all around him working on him. He is flat out on the ground at the moment. They've been taking his pulse and putting a neck collar on him. What's quite unusual as well is that a number of the police officers around them here, just between Westminster Abbey and the Queen Elizabeth II Conference Centre, those police officers have been asking our camera crews to make sure that we film the abuse and the violence directed towards police officers on the ground, because they see that they are getting seriously injured here, some police officers, and they want that documented. That is very unusual.